Hi guys, it's Dr. Salcedo, your conscious gynecologist. I'm so glad you're here for the final session of Conscious Motherhood. Now, this has been a 4 session master class in order to teach women about cardiovascular disease risk factors that really increase the risk for pregnancy complications, but also later metabolic complications as we progress into mature women, heart disease, diabetes, hypertension. And this is actually more of a personal journey today of how I implement this in my daily life. And I hope that this is going to be helpful for you as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and teach you how I implement this in my daily life. So I'm just like you guys. I know I'm a gynecologist and I know I've got this crazy job, but honestly, the most important things in my life are right here in front of me. This is my family, my husband, and my 3 boys. This being a great mother and woman is really why I'm doing this so that I can have incredible longevity and life satisfaction and not be bothered by gynecology pain, endometriosis pain, and be burdened by the problems of pregnancy complications. And so I really do believe by following these steps that I've laid out in all 4 of these lectures, that women can have a fruitful, long-lasting, beneficial, and satisfying life. And this is more of a window inside of who I am. And I hope that you find some of what I do helpful. So I'm just a mom. I'm just trying to get by. I have 3 young boys, and I have a husband that cooks sometimes. And I used to actually not know how to cook. I used to just be actually terrible at it. But as I've shared before, I like following steps and directions, and I like rubric. I like you just tell me what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. And so because I can follow directions, I can follow a recipe, sort of, and I've been eating this way actually now for about 7 years, and it has had tremendous improvements in my health. It's not overnight. And if you think about how long it takes for tissue to turn over, then that's how long it takes for those certain organs to heal. And so our skin heals quickly because it's constantly turning over. And so, but you should have seen my skin a few years ago. I had crazy acne and I still do have some scarring, but it's a lot better than what it was because the tissue turns over on your skin quickly. But if you think about like your intestines or your uterus, it takes a while for all of those cells to be replenished with healthy cells as we're improving our lifestyle. So this is what works for me. Now, it might not work for everybody, but it works for me. And maybe there'll be some variations of what you do. And I would love to see in the comments certain like life strategies that you do to help make your meal prep and your planning a lot more practical for us. So please share. So what works for me is I do tons of meal prepping on the weekends. So usually Saturday-ish, I'm looking at like the mailers, like those like newspaper mailers that we get from the supermarkets, and I'm looking for the sales and what market has the best sale. And what I'll end up doing is creating a meal recipe daily list for the following week of what we're going to eat Monday through Friday based on what's on sale. And so then I create a menu based on what's on sale. And so create a grocery list. And sometimes I'll go to the store or sometimes I'll do an online shopping and I'll order everything and go pick it up. But I only buy what's on my list. And particularly if I go to the store, because if I go to the store, I'm very, very tempted to buy things that are not on the list. And so, but if we buy only what's on the list, and it becomes actually very financially frugal because then you won't overspend. And then what I do for dinner is that we have whatever I plan for dinner that night, but I make double. So I actually have two pans going at the same time, and one's for dinner and one's for lunch the following day. And that's unfortunately my kids' school doesn't have the greatest school lunch program, so I pack them with thermoses of food so that they can eat what we had for last night's dinner for their lunch the next day. And so yeah, kids get leftovers too. So, how do I meal plan? Well, Diet Doctor is an excellent resource, and it's this website here that can teach you how to eat low carb. We're using wonderful visual guides. Dr. Andreas Ensfeld is incredibly resourceful, has beautiful website and very easy to use recipes that don't have ads. So if you join their subscription, you can get all these thousands of recipes for about $100 a year. Or you can use their free service, but you're only able to get about maybe 25% of the recipes. But it's a good first start. And it's a really great way to kind of dive into low carb living. Now, once you get good at it, then you can kind of look into recipe books and stuff. So I do a lot of recipe books as well, and I'll get them free from like buy nothing groups. I'll get them from the thrift store, all those kinds of places in order to help supplement because I've actually gone through most of the recipes on Diet Doctor already over all these years. And so my kids are kind of bored of those recipes. So we're trying to find new recipes. So I'm always looking for recipes. I'm poring over recipe books on that Saturday as I'm meal planning. Now, a lot of this comes from like trying not to keep your weekends too full because then you can't do a really good intentional job for planning for food for the week. So, how to do it on a budget. Now, like just like, everybody out there, I really am on a budget. Like I've got 3 kids. My husband stays home with the kids, and so we really, really have to be careful about our finances and not overspend. And so a huge part of that is planning, then shopping what's only on the list, then cooking, and then eating, of course. So, planning. So you got to make that meal plan. And like I usually keep it on my phone, on under notes, or I'll make the Diet Doctor website has a great meal planner that actually has an app that you can and it has the ingredient list that you can go to the store and tack off everything that's on the list. And just create that shopping list and stick to it and see what's in your pantry already and then plan according to that. So it's like sometimes I have extra spices or coconut oil or cans of tuna and stuff that I can use. And so look what's already inside your pantry and plan your meals around that. Sometimes I have like frozen chicken that I have forgotten about for a couple of months that I can still defrost and use. That's a really great source to try to create meal planning on a budget. And remember, some of the data says that 17% of what we spend in the grocery store is impulse. Man, not me. It's way higher. I'm like usually 50 to 60% of like, ooh, look at this new, a brand of yogurt that I found, or look at this new mustard, and it like starts to add up. So just be careful. Make a grocery list and stick to it if you can. And then don't include snacks in that list. So try not to buy these snacks because they're really part of like it'll turn into a fourth meal. You don't really need snacks to survive. My kids do breakfast, lunch, a 4 o'clock snack, and dinner. There is a YouTube video I have about that. But, I don't even really eat breakfast most days because I'm just not that hungry. So try not to buy snacks because they're really not necessary. When you go to the grocery store, buy regular cheese. Don't buy the shredded cheese because if you buy block cheese, then you actually pay a lot less than the premium of the processor trying to shred it for you. It's actually more. And so, try to get things that are not pre-cut for you because it actually the food processor will pass off that price to you, the cost of processing the food, shredding even, chopping the chopped vegetables. You really can do that on your own. It's a great way to save money. Now, organic and like grass-fed and pasture-raised and all that, just buy what you can. Don't feel bad that if you can't buy the best quality food, but just buy like whole food if you can, okay? That's really the most important thing. Frozen vegetables are actually really great methods of getting good vegetables all season long, and they are really frozen at the height of their freshness. So it's an incredible way to add veggies if you're not able to get fresh vegetables. And buy simple meats. A lot of ethnic food stores will sell like chicken legs for 79 cents a pound, pork roast, and tough meats that like all of those kinds of things, once you simmer them for a few hours in a crock pot, become incredibly tender and delicious. I laugh at this part of the slide because it says no kale. It's more expensive. And that's because kale is very trendy. And so try to avoid like trendy vegetables. Like right now there's like zoodles and squash. What do you call it? That orange squash. Um, butternut squash, zoodles and stuff. You can shred them yourself. You can make the noodle yourself with a couple of easy home appliances, and then you'll really reduce your cost. In fact, in the 80s and early 90s, the biggest restaurant that would actually buy kale was Sizzler, and the reason is because it was actually the garnish on all of like the all you can eat like buffets and like the different salads and the salad ingredients that were in the salad bars, and they would put kale all around it. And now it's become like something we eat, but before it was just a garnish. So please don't buy that stuff. It's expensive and it's probably hard on your gut. Also, nuts. Nuts can be pretty expensive. And so, peanut butter is a really great way to get, some protein if, from a plant-based perspective. But nuts in general are incredibly expensive. A bag of walnuts or almonds can run you like anywhere between $5 to $7 US. It's really expensive. I would rather that people eat meat because it's a lot less expensive. Plus, nuts can cause a lot of intestinal bloating and dysfunction because they're so hard to process. Canned fish is really, really good. When if you go look into canned tuna, always get the kind that is in olive oil. It's incredibly delicious, and I eat that all the time over a salad with a squeeze of lemon and some salt, some pickled vegetables. It's delicious, and it's an incredible source of vitamin A and omega-3s. That's really helpful for your gut. And also to remember to buy in season. Now, blueberries are really good sources of low carb vegetables for a lot of us who can eat them. But sometimes people with endometriosis or people who are really sensitive to carbohydrates, it can cause a lot of intestinal bloating. And that has to do with the lectins. Now, certain fruits and vegetables have these anti-nutrients in their skin called lectins, and there's less lectins the more ripe that you get a fruit on the skin. But if we buy vegetables and fruits that are not in season, they usually come from the opposite hemisphere and they're picked at a time where they're not completely ripe and they're full of lectins and they cause a lot of intestinal bloating and inflammation. And so definitely if you know that certain foods and vegetables aggravate your joints and cause bloating, it's probably the lectin content and you should avoid it or only eat it when it's in season. Now, buy cheaper cuts of meat. So the fattier meat is actually the more is usually cheaper, particularly with ground beef. So if you've ever noticed on a ground beef package, there's like fractions on there, so 70-30 or 90-10. And the reason is because that is the percentage of protein to fat ratio. So it's 70% protein, 30% fat. If you buy a 70-30 ground beef, it actually has a lot more fat content. It's a lot more nutritious and it's cheaper because the lower in fat content you go, the more it's been processed. And the same thing goes for ground turkey. We also use a lot of rotisserie bones. So we'll get like a rotisserie chicken from the store and eat the chicken with a salad. And then the bones, you can just throw the whole carcass in like some water and boil it down, and you'll get wonderful bone broth. And you can use that for your next soup or just drink that for your fasting days. It's an incredible way to get good nutrients and collagens for your body for repair. Now, the cheaper cuts of meats also things that you can use with the slow cooker. And so you can get like oxtail bones, or you can get soup bones, or a lot of like the bones that are on ruminant or pork meats have lots of fat around them. And also meat. And so when you slow cook them, they're incredibly delicious and they release a lot of the broth and it's really nutritious and they're actually really inexpensive. And so I would go with those kinds of cuts because you get all your great vitamins and they're way cheaper than like a porterhouse steak that's $8.99 a pound. Stew meat is $2.99 a pound. Now, when you cook once, eat twice, make a double portion. So for me, every night when I make food, I usually have two burners going, one for breakfast or one for dinner that night and one for the following day. It's if you buy in bulk and cook in bulk, then you can actually save it or freeze it for the next day or for another time where you're in a pinch and then you feel tempted to go get fast food. But if you have a meal already frozen in your freezer that's delicious that you made and you know what's in it, it's a wonderful way to help reduce your budget and focus your money on things that really matter. Now, cooking at home, I mean, here's a picture of some delicious um, uh, lamb chops. And if you could do lamb chops with some butter and herb butter, and that will cost you about $15. But if you go to like a fried chicken place and get their family meal. It'll be $20, but it'll be like mostly carbs. And then, of course, all like the fried oils that are around the fried chicken. It's incredibly inflammatory. Try not to do that stuff. If you cook from home and just spend a little bit of time, all you need is a cut of meat, some salt and pepper and butter. You're gonna have a great meal. So eat more fat. So if you do decide that you're going to eat more vegetables, there's this great website on the Diet Doctor website. There's a blog post about how to eat more fat. And if we eat vegetables, like broccoli or some snap peas, always add fat to it and salt because that is what's going to make it delicious. So olive oil and salt and pepper or butter with some salt and pepper is going to make it really delicious. And it's going to have your kids be more interested in eating these kind of less starchy vegetables. So what do we stop doing? Okay. Well, stop unnecessary snacking. Okay. So if you eat 3 square meals a day with enough fat and protein, you will not be hungry and you will be able to make food choices every 3 to 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours even. I don't really eat breakfast. I'll do lunch and dinner. So lunch around 12, dinner around 7. Maybe sometimes I'll have a 4 o'clock snack, and that usually means like a string cheese or something. But outside of that, you really don't need to snack. It's going to cause those unnecessary insulin spikes. If you're feeling the need to eat every 2 hours, you are definitely struggling with insulin resistance, and you really need to try to include more fat and protein so that it'll keep you steady and not have these ebbs and flows. Snacking is incredibly expensive because you have to buy more of this stuff, and it can lead to the fourth meal. You don't really want to be eating that much. And, really a lot of times snacking comes from a trigger of like, oh man, I'm feeling anxious. I need to go outside. I had a hard day at work. My coworker's making me feel a little bit nervous. I need to eat, or there's too much work on my plate. I need to eat to feel better. Notice your triggers because that is usually the trigger for snacking. Also, stop wasting food. Now, if you meal plan, you'll probably have a lot less food waste and you'll get through everything in your refrigerator with intention. Before I used to do this, we used to go grocery shopping. I would buy a bunch of stuff and that I was hoping to make, but I didn't make, and that ended up rotting in the refrigerator. And so, but if you have a plan Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of how you're going to eat, then you will definitely stop wasting a ton of food. And some of the numbers say that 25% of food is thrown away. I would argue that that number is way more. It's probably like 30 to 35 to 40% of food can be thrown away that's inside your refrigerator just from waste. And so try not to impulse, purchase. If you follow your grocery list, you're definitely not going to have struggles with that. And any extra food, just save it, put it in a freezer safe container. And then that'll be like a take home, frozen lunch for work. You don't need to buy drinks. Make sure that you try to avoid drinks. And if you really do want to buy something, look into a sparkling water. But you don't need to make smoothies. You absolutely don't need to have smoothies at all. You don't need any of like the vitamins that are in juice. Think about how many oranges it takes to make a glass of water or a glass of orange juice. Now, if think of like no one would ever eat 10 oranges at a time. And 10 oranges really is what it takes sometimes to make one whole glass of orange juice. That's way too much sugar. Your body's going to really struggle with that. And you're going to get fatty liver. The other thing is make coffee at home. You can buy some delicious coffee beans and blends and make things at home. And you won't have to add so much sugar or at all, any sugar at all. And it's a lot more satisfying. You don't need to buy lunch because if you buy lunch, then you're not using the leftovers from the night before. And really, if you buy processed food, it's going to increase your grocery budget by spending the money that it takes for the processors to chop it or shred vegetables for you. So the other thing too is avoid the center of the grocery store. The grocery store on the perimeter is where all the fresh foods are, but in the center is where all the shelf-stable foods are that are really full of additives and preservatives that your body just doesn't need. Stick to the periphery of the grocery store, where the deli is, where the meat lockers are, where the produce sections are. Stick to the periphery. And thank you for going through all these lectures with me. I hope you enjoyed this masterclass. I really do believe that with these very simple solutions, you can really improve your pregnancy outcomes. You can really improve your lifestyle, your ability to sleep, your ability to conceive, your ability to reduce your risk for pregnancy complications, and not to mention cardiovascular disease and diabetes when you get a little bit older. So let's do this together. Let's work on our conscious motherhood together. I really hope that you enjoyed these series of master classes. It was a joy to do them for you. I hope you enjoyed this basic primer on how we can improve our health. Please write in your comments about what this class did for you. I hope that you use it as a building block for a better womanhood. Thank you.